They say blood is thicker than water, but I learned that sometimes the thickest blood carries the deepest secrets. I'm Mia, and until 3 months ago, I thought the worst betrayal would be my sister-in-law stealing the baby name I'd cherished for 7 years. I was wrong. What I discovered buried in her family's DNA would shake their perfect world to its foundation, and all because she couldn't resist taking what was mine. It started at what should have been a celebration. The baby shower was everything you'd expect from my sister-in-law Vanessa: perfectly coordinated pastels, artisanal cupcakes, and enough Instagram-worthy moments to fuel her social media for months. I sat in the corner nursing my third mimosa, watching her open gift after gift with theatrical gasps of delight. "Oh my God, this is gorgeous," she squealed, holding up a tiny onesie that probably cost more than my grocery budget. "Baby Aurora is going to look so precious in this." The name hit me like a physical blow. Aurora, my Aurora. The name I'd whispered to myself since I was 16. The name I'd written in secret notebooks. The name that meant everything to me because it represented hope after my mother's death. Aurora, like the northern lights my mother and I had dreamed of seeing together. "Did you just say Aurora?" My voice came out steadier than I felt, cutting through the chorus of congratulations. Vanessa's eyes met mine across the room, and I saw something flicker there. Guilt, maybe, or defiance. "Yes, isn't it beautiful? Derek and I just decided last week. It means dawn, new beginnings." She placed a protective hand over her 7-month bump. "It feels so perfect for our little miracle." Perfect. The word twisted in my stomach because she was right. It was perfect. For me. For the daughter I dreamed of having someday. For the connection to my mother I'd never get back. "That's interesting," I said, forcing a smile. "It's just that I've been planning to use that name for years. Remember? I told you about it at Christmas dinner 2 years ago when you asked about my future baby names." The room fell silent, except for the soft classical music playing in the background. 20 pairs of eyes ping-ponged between us, like we were playing the world's most awkward tennis match. Vanessa laughed, a tinkling sound that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, Mia, I'm sure lots of people like that name. Besides, you're not even pregnant yet, and we are." She gestured to her prominent belly. "First come, first served, right?" First come, first served? Like my deepest emotional connection to a name was some kind of grocery store checkout line. I felt my face burn as murmurs rippled through the gathered women, my mother-in-law pursing her lips, my own sister Sarah shooting me a warning look, Vanessa's mother nodding approvingly at her daughter's declaration. "Right," I managed, taking another sip of mimosa, of course. But as I sat there watching Vanessa bask in the glow of her stolen name, something cold and calculating settled in my chest. She wanted to play games? Fine. But she'd forgotten one crucial detail about me. I never played games I couldn't win. After the shower, I sat in my car in the parking lot, hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. My phone buzzed with a text from my husband, Marcus. "How did it go? Are you okay?" I stared at the message, then at the baby shower favor bag in my passenger seat, a small succulent in a pot painted with Baby Aurora in swirling gold letters. Even the party favors were a slap in the face. Another text came through, this time from Sarah. "I can't believe she did that. Are you coming to dinner tonight?" Sunday dinner at my in-laws, where Vanessa would no doubt regale everyone with stories about her perfect shower and her perfect name choice, where I'd have to sit there and pretend my heart wasn't breaking every time someone said Aurora. I started the engine, but instead of heading home, I found myself driving to the cemetery where my mother was buried. I hadn't been here in months, but today I needed to feel close to her, needed to remember why Aurora mattered so much. The headstone was simple. Elena Rodriguez, beloved mother, gone too soon. I sat cross-legged on the grass beside it, ignoring the dampness seeping through my dress. "She took it, Mom," I whispered to the stone. "She took Aurora, and she knew exactly what she was doing." The wind rustled through the oak tree above us, and for a moment, I could almost hear my mother's voice. "Mija, sometimes the universe has a way of balancing things out. You just have to be patient." Patient. I'd been patient for 7 years, waiting for the right time to have a baby, waiting for financial stability, waiting for Marcus to finish his residency. And now my patience had cost me the one thing that connected me to the mother I'd lost. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. Derek's name flashed on the screen, Vanessa's husband, my brother-in-law. I almost declined, but curiosity won. "Hey, Mia," his voice was strained. "I just wanted to call and, well, apologize for earlier. I know Aurora means a lot to you because of your mom." I sat up straighter. "You remember that?" "Of course I remember. You told us the whole story about how she used to call you her little Aurora when you were sick, how you promised her you'd name your first daughter that." He sighed heavily. "I tried to talk Vanessa out of it, but she said you'd understand. She said family names are different from personal preferences." Family names? As if my connection to Aurora was just a whim, while hers was somehow more legitimate. And what do you think, Derek? I think she's wrong. I think she should choose something else. But you know how she gets when she's set on something. I did know. Vanessa had always been the type to want what others had, whether it was a dress, a job, or apparently a name that held deep personal meaning. She collected other people's dreams like trophies. "Well," I said carefully, "I guess what's done is done. But Derek, I hope you know that actions have consequences. Sometimes when we take something that doesn't belong to us, we might discover we've bitten off more than we can chew." There was a long pause. "What do you mean?" "Nothing specific, just that the universe has a funny way of balancing things out." After I hung up, I sat in the cemetery for another hour, watching the sun set behind the hills. By the time I finally headed home, I had a plan. It wasn't revenge, exactly. It was more like restoration of balance. Marcus was waiting in the kitchen when I got home, takeout containers from our favorite Thai place spread across the counter. "I figured you might not feel like cooking," he said, wrapping me in a hug. "I'm sorry about today, baby. I know how much that name means to you." "It's fine," I lied, breathing in his familiar scent of cedar and soap. "Actually, I have an idea. What if we got Derek a gift? Something to celebrate the pregnancy?" Marcus pulled back to look at me, suspicious. "What kind of gift?" "Oh, you know how Derek's always been interested in genealogy? I was thinking one of those DNA ancestry kits. He's mentioned wanting to do one, but never getting around to it." "That's actually really thoughtful." Marcus looked surprised. "Though I have to admit, I'm a little worried about why you're being so nice about this whole situation." I smiled, standing on my tiptoes to kiss his cheek. "Because holding grudges is exhausting, and family is family. Besides, I think Derek would really enjoy learning about his heritage." What I didn't tell Marcus was that I remembered something from last Christmas dinner, a conversation between Derek's parents that had stuck in my mind for months. His mother, Linda, had had a few too many glasses of wine and started talking about the roads not taken and what might have been. She'd mentioned her first fiancé, a man named James Morrison, who she'd broken up with just months before meeting Derek's father, Robert. "He was the love of my life," she'd said, staring into her wine glass. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if we'd stayed together. He was so different from Robert, artistic, passionate. We had this connection that was—" She'd trailed off, noticing Derek listening from across the room. "Well, that's all ancient history now." But what had made the conversation memorable wasn't just Linda's wistfulness, it was Derek's reaction. He'd gone very quiet, very still, in a way that suggested he'd heard variations of this story before. And there was something about the timeline that hadn't quite added up in my mind, though I hadn't thought much about it at the time. Now, sitting at my kitchen table with pad thai and a head full of calculations, I did the math. Derek had been born in September 1992. Linda and Robert had gotten married in February 1992, which meant Derek had been conceived in December 1991, right around the time Linda claimed she'd broken up with James Morrison. Of course, the timeline could be perfectly innocent. Maybe they'd had a brief reconciliation after their breakup, or maybe Linda's memory of the exact dates was fuzzy after 30 years. but there was something about the way she'd looked at Derek during that conversation, something wistful and guilty and sad, that made me think there might be more to the story. The next morning, I ordered the DNA kit online, paying extra for rush delivery. While I waited, I did some research on James Morrison. It wasn't hard to find him. He was a semi-famous landscape photographer who'd never married and had no children. His Instagram was full of stunning nature photographs and philosophical captions about finding beauty in unexpected places. He lived about 2 hours away in a small mountain town called Cedar Falls. According to his bio, he'd moved there in 1993, the year after Derek was born, to focus on his art and heal from past heartbreak. The timing was interesting. The DNA kit arrived on Tuesday. I wrapped it in cheerful yellow paper and attached a card. For Derek, thought you might enjoy exploring your family history. Love, Mia and Marcus. I delivered it personally, finding Derek at home while Vanessa was at her book club. He seemed genuinely touched by the gift, which made me feel a twinge of guilt. Derek was a good man, kind, thoughtful, completely devoted to Vanessa despite her flaws. He didn't deserve to be collateral damage in whatever war his wife had started with me. But then I remembered the baby shower, remembered the casual cruelty of first come, first served, and the guilt faded. Sometimes innocent people got hurt when others played careless games with other people's hearts. "This is so cool, Mia," Derek said, turning the kit over in his hands. "I've been meaning to do one of these for years. Vanessa's always saying she wants to know more about our family medical history for the baby." "That's exactly what I thought," I said brightly. "Plus, you might discover some interesting family stories. You never know what secrets are hiding in your DNA." Derek laughed. "In my family? Trust me, we're about as boring as they come. 3 generations of accountants and teachers. The most exciting thing in our family tree is probably my great-aunt who moved to California in the 1960s. "You'd be surprised," I said. "Sometimes the most ordinary families have the most extraordinary secrets." 2 weeks later, Derek called me, his voice shaking with excitement. "Mia, you're not going to believe this. The results came back, and there's this match, a half-uncle I never knew existed. His name is James Morrison, and he's a photographer, and apparently he and my mom knew each other in college." My heart started racing, but I kept my voice calm. "That's amazing, Derek. Are you going to reach out to him?" "I already did. We're meeting for coffee tomorrow. He seems really nice, and get this, he says he's been wondering about my mom for years. Apparently they dated seriously back in the day. How does your mom feel about you connecting with him?" There was a pause. I haven't told her yet, and wanted to meet him first, get a sense of what their relationship was like. You know how she gets about the past. She always says there's no point in looking backward. After Derek hung up, I sat in my office staring at my computer screen, unable to focus on work. What had I done? I'd wanted to shake up Vanessa's perfect world, maybe cause a little family drama to match the chaos she'd created in mine. But this was bigger than drama. This was potentially life-altering. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Hi, this is James Morrison. Derek gave me your number. He said you were the one who suggested the DNA test. I wanted to thank you. I've been wondering about Linda's son for 30 years. My hands shook as I typed back. "You're welcome. I hope you both find what you're looking for." "I think we already have," came the reply. "Derek looks just like I did at his age. It's uncanny." I stared at the message for a long time before deleting the entire conversation. There was no going back now. The next few days passed in a blur of normalcy. Marcus was working long shifts at the hospital, Vanessa was posting bump updates on social media, and I was pretending to care about quarterly reports and budget meetings. But underneath the surface, I was waiting for the earthquake I'd set in motion. It came on a Thursday afternoon. I was in the middle of a conference call when my phone started buzzing with messages. First, Derek, "We need to talk, something's happened." Then Sarah, "Holy shit, Mia, what did you do?" Then, most surprisingly, Linda herself, "I know this was you. We need to meet." I excused myself from the call and drove to the coffee shop where Linda had asked to meet. She was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with her hands wrapped around a mug like she was trying to steal its warmth. She looked older than I'd ever seen her, fragile in a way that made my victory feel hollow. "You knew," she said as soon as I sat down. "Somehow you knew, and you orchestrated this whole thing." I ordered a latte from the hovering waitress, buying myself time to think. I didn't know anything for certain, Linda. I just thought Derek might enjoy learning about his family history. "Don't," her voice was sharp. "Don't insult my intelligence. You picked that gift specifically because you suspected something, didn't you?" I studied her face, the same green eyes as Derek, the same stubborn chin. What I suspected doesn't matter now. What matters is what Derek knows. Linda's composure cracked. He knows everything. James told him everything about our relationship, about the timing, about how I chose Robert because he was safe and stable, and James was everything I wanted but couldn't have. And Derek? How's he handling it? "How do you think?" Linda's voice broke. "The man he's called Dad for 30 years isn't his biological father. The man who raised him, who taught him to ride a bike and helped him with homework and walked him down the aisle at his wedding, none of that matters now because some DNA test says his real father is a stranger." I felt a stab of guilt. Robert will always be his father in every way that matters. Will he? Because Robert's not handling this well. He's not handling it well at all. Linda wiped her eyes with a napkin. 30 years of marriage, and he's talking about feeling like his whole life has been a lie. The guilt deepened. "I'm sorry, Linda. You didn't think about the consequences, you mean. You were so focused on whatever game you're playing with Vanessa that you didn't consider the real people who might get hurt." She was right, and we both knew it. I'd been so focused on the satisfaction of disrupting Vanessa's perfect life that I hadn't fully considered the collateral damage. Robert, who'd loved and raised Derek as his own son. Derek, who was probably questioning everything about his identity. Even James, who'd been thrust into a situation he'd never asked for. "What are you going to do now?" I asked quietly. Linda laughed bitterly. "I don't know. James wants to be part of Derek's life, which I understand. Derek is curious about his biological father, which I also understand. But Robert feels betrayed and deceived. And Vanessa is furious with everyone for keeping secrets during her pregnancy. And you? I feel like I'm 30 years old again, facing the same impossible choice between the man I love and the man I should love." Linda stood up, gathering her purse. "I hope whatever you got out of this was worth it, Mia. I hope destroying my family was worth your petty revenge." She left me sitting there with my untouched latte and the full weight of what I'd done. This wasn't the clean, satisfying revenge I'd imagined. This was messy and complicated and human in ways I hadn't prepared for. My phone rang. Marcus. "Hey, baby, I just heard from Derek. He sounds pretty shaken up. What's going on?" I closed my eyes. "I'll tell you when you get home. But Marcus, I think I've made a terrible mistake." That evening, Marcus and I sat on our couch while I explained everything. The baby shower, the stolen name, the DNA test, the revelations that had followed. Marcus listened without interrupting, his expression growing more concerned with each detail. "Jesus, Mia," he said when I finished, "what were you thinking?" "I was thinking about Aurora," I said, my voice small. "I was thinking about how Vanessa took something precious from me and didn't even care. I wanted her to understand what it felt like to have your world shaken up. And now I realize that I've potentially destroyed a 30-year marriage and turned Derek's life upside down, all because I couldn't handle sharing a baby name." I buried my face in my hands. "God, Marcus, what kind of person does that make me?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "It makes you human," he said finally. "Hurt and angry and human. But it also means you need to figure out how to make this right. I don't know if I can. The truth is out there now. I can't stuff it back in the box. Maybe you can't fix what's broken, but you can stop making it worse. And maybe you can help them navigate what comes next." Before I could respond, my phone rang. Derek's name on the screen. I looked at Marcus, who nodded encouragingly. "Hi, Derek. Mia." His voice was exhausted. "I know you're probably the last person who wants to hear from me right now, but I need to ask you something." "Of course. What is it?" "Did you know? When you gave me that DNA kit, did you know what I might find?" I considered lying, but Derek deserved better than that. I suspected something might be there. Your mom mentioned James at Christmas, and the timing seemed interesting. So you used me to get back at Vanessa for the name thing. It started that way, I admitted. But Derek, I want you to know that I never intended for it to go this far. I thought maybe you'd discover a distant relative or some interesting family history. You didn't think it would blow up my entire family. No, I didn't, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Derek was quiet for so long I thought he'd hung up. Finally, he spoke again. The thing is, Mia, I think I needed to know. Not the way it happened, but I needed to know. There were always things that didn't quite add up, you know? Little comments, looks between my parents, the way my mom would get this sad expression whenever certain songs came on the radio. How are you doing with all of it? I don't know. I met James yesterday, my biological father. He's a good man, kind, artistic, completely different from Dad, from Robert. He never knew about me, never even suspected. He thought Mom chose Robert, and that was the end of their story. And now? Now I have two fathers, and I don't know how to navigate that. Robert raised me, but James, there's this instant connection, you know? Like looking in a mirror. And I feel guilty for feeling that connection because it means I'm somehow betraying the man who changed my diapers and taught me to drive. My heart ached for him. Derek, you can love them both. Biology doesn't diminish the bond you have with Robert. Tell that to Robert. He's barely speaking to me. Or to Mom. The whole family's in chaos, and Vanessa is convinced the stress is going to hurt the baby. I'm sorry, I said again, knowing how inadequate the words were. I know you are. And honestly, I'm not even angry at you anymore. I'm angry at Mom for keeping this secret for 30 years. I'm angry at myself for not asking harder questions. I'm angry at the whole situation. What can I do to help? Derek laughed, but there was no humor in it. I don't know if there's anything anyone can do at this point. We're all just trying to figure out how to move forward. After we hung up, I sat in the dark living room thinking about consequences, intentions, and the space between them. I'd wanted to hurt Vanessa, but I'd ended up hurting everyone around her instead. The baby name that had started this whole mess seemed trivial now compared to the family upheaval I'd caused. The next morning, I woke up to find a series of texts from Vanessa. They'd been sent at 2 a.m., and they were brutal. I know what you did. You couldn't stand that I was happy, could you? You've destroyed my family because of a fucking baby name. Derek's not sleeping, Robert's not eating, Linda's crying constantly, and I'm supposed to stay calm for the baby's sake while you sit there feeling smug about your little revenge. I hope you're happy. I hope it was worth it. I stared at the messages, feeling sick. Vanessa was right. I had destroyed her family. Not intentionally, not to this extent, but the result was the same. I'd thrown a stone into still water and watched the ripples spread far beyond what I'd imagined possible. I called in sick to work and spent the day researching family therapy resources, looking up support groups for people dealing with paternity revelations, trying to find some way to help clean up the mess I'd made. It felt inadequate, but it was something. Around noon, Linda called. I need to see you, she said. There's something else we need to discuss. We met at the same coffee shop as before. Linda looked better than she had the day before, less fragile, more determined. I've been thinking about what you said yesterday, she began, about how you only suspected something might be there. How did you know to suspect anything at all? I explained about the Christmas dinner conversation, about the timeline that hadn't quite added up, about the way Derek had reacted to her story about James. Linda nodded slowly. I see. So you noticed things that others missed. I guess so. The thing is, Mia, I've been living with this secret for 30 years. Do you know what that's like? Do you know what it's like to look at your child every day and see someone else's face looking back at you? To love your husband while knowing you've built your entire marriage on a lie? I didn't know how to respond to that. I've been drowning in this secret, Linda continued, and in some twisted way, I'm almost grateful that it's out there now. Not grateful for the pain it's causing, but grateful that I don't have to carry it alone anymore. I never thought about it from your perspective, I admitted. Of course you didn't. You were focused on your own pain, your own sense of injustice, which I understand. What Vanessa did with the name was cruel and thoughtless. But Mia, you have to understand that your actions have consequences far beyond your intended target. I'm starting to understand that. Linda leaned forward. Robert and I are going to counseling. We start next week. Derek and James are planning to spend some time together, get to know each other. And Vanessa, Linda sighed. Vanessa is learning that the world doesn't revolve around her wants and needs, which is probably a lesson she should have learned years ago. Is there anything I can do to help? Actually, yes, there is. Linda pulled out her phone and showed me a text message. This is from James. He wants to thank you for giving him the chance to know his son. He asked me to pass along his gratitude. I stared at the message, conflicted. I don't deserve gratitude. I didn't do this for noble reasons. Maybe not. But good things can come from bad intentions, just like bad things can come from good intentions. The universe has a way of balancing things out, as you said. 3 weeks later, I found myself at another family gathering, this time a small dinner party at Derek and Vanessa's house. The atmosphere was different from previous gatherings, more cautious, but somehow more honest. Robert and Linda sat together, holding hands but with a new awareness between them. Derek moved between Robert and James, who had been invited as the newest member of the family, with an ease that suggested they were all finding their way to a new normal. Vanessa was noticeably quiet, her usual social butterfly energy replaced by something more subdued. She kept one hand on her prominent belly, as if protecting the baby from the family chaos swirling around them. How are you feeling? I asked her during a quiet moment in the kitchen. Tired, she said without looking at me. Scared. Confused. She paused, then added, guilty. Guilty? About the name. About Aurora. She finally met my eyes. I knew how much it meant to you. I knew about your mom, about the connection. I took it anyway because I was jealous. Jealous of what? Of how easily everything comes to you. Your career, your marriage, your relationship with Marcus's family. You make it all look so effortless, and I've always felt like I was scrambling to keep up. She placed both hands on her belly. When I heard that name, I thought if I took it, maybe some of that grace would transfer to me. Maybe my daughter would have the kind of meaningful name that came with a beautiful story, instead of just being another trendy choice. I was quiet for a moment, processing this unexpected vulnerability. Vanessa, you don't need to steal other people's stories to create meaning for your daughter. You can create your own. I know that now, and I'm sorry. Not just because of what happened with Derek's family, but because I hurt you, because I was selfish and thoughtless and cruel. Thank you for saying that. I've been thinking about other names, she continued, names that actually mean something to Derek and me, not names I borrowed from other people's lives. We're thinking about Elena, actually, after your mother, if that's okay with you. I felt tears prick my eyes. That would be beautiful. Mom would have loved that. Really? You don't mind? Elena isn't just my mom's name, and honestly, I think she'd be honored to have a little girl carry her name, even if that little girl isn't mine. Vanessa wiped her eyes, smearing her carefully applied mascara. I don't deserve your forgiveness. Maybe not, but I don't deserve James's gratitude either, and I got it anyway. Sometimes grace isn't about what we deserve. From the dining room, we could hear laughter. Derek telling a story about his first photography lesson with James, Robert adding commentary about Derek's artistic attempts as a child. The sound was warm and genuine, the kind of laughter that comes from people who've weathered a storm together and found themselves still standing. Do you think they'll be okay? Vanessa asked, listening to the voices of her husband and his two fathers. I think they're going to be better than okay. Different, but better. More honest. And us? Are we going to be okay? I considered the question. The anger I'd carried for weeks had transformed into something else. Not quite forgiveness, but not quite resentment either. Something more complex. I think so. But it's going to take time, and it's going to take both of us choosing to do better. Later that evening, Marcus and I drove home through the quiet streets of our neighborhood. That went better than I expected, he said, taking my hand as we stopped at a red light. Much better. I think they're all going to be okay. And what about you? Are you okay? I thought about the question. I'm learning to be. I'm learning that revenge doesn't actually make you feel better, even when it works. And I'm learning that sometimes the best way to heal from having something taken from you is to give something freely instead. Very philosophical. What brought that on? Elena. When Vanessa suggested naming the baby Elena, I realized something. I've been holding on to Aurora so tightly, treating it like it was some kind of limited resource that could be depleted if someone else used it. But names aren't like that. Love isn't like that. There's enough meaning and connection and beauty to go around. Marcus squeezed my hand. Does that mean you're ready to start trying for our own little Aurora? I smiled, watching the familiar landmarks of our neighborhood pass by. I think I'm ready to start trying for our own little miracle, whatever we decide to call her. 6 months later, I was in the hospital holding my newborn daughter, counting her tiny fingers and toes, and marveling at how something so small could contain so much love. Marcus squeezed my hand, exhausted but glowing with pride. "So," he said softly, "have you decided on a name?" I looked down at my daughter's perfect face, at her dark hair and long eyelashes, at the way she gripped my finger with surprising strength. "I was thinking about Hope," I said. "Hope Elena, after both of our mothers." "Hope Elena," Marcus repeated, testing the sound. "I love it. It's perfect." From across the room, a huge bouquet of flowers caught my eye. The card read, "Congratulations on your beautiful Hope. With love and gratitude, Derek, Vanessa, and baby Elena." I smiled, thinking about the strange journey that had brought us all here. Vanessa and I weren't best friends. We might never be, but we'd found our way to something like peace. Derek had built relationships with both of his fathers, creating a family structure that was unconventional but full of love. Linda and Robert had emerged from their counseling stronger and more honest than before. And I had learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's forgiveness, growth, and the courage to build something beautiful from the ashes of what was broken. My phone buzzed with a text from James. "Saw the announcement. Congratulations on Hope. She's lucky to have you as a mother." I looked down at my daughter, at Hope Elena, and realized he was wrong. I was the lucky one. I was the one who got to raise this miracle, to teach her about love and forgiveness and the importance of choosing grace over revenge. Outside the hospital window, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Aurora colors, I thought, and for the first time in months, the thought didn't hurt. Instead, it felt like a promise that beautiful things could emerge from the darkest moments, that hope could bloom even in the most unlikely circumstances. Hope Elena stirred in my arms, opening her eyes to look at me with the unfocused gaze of a newborn. "Hello, little one," I whispered. "Welcome to the world. We have so much to show you." And as I held my daughter close, I thought about all the stories I would tell her someday, about her grandmother Elena, who taught me that love transcends death, about how she got her name, and why hope is always worth choosing, about the importance of forgiveness and the danger of revenge, and how sometimes the best gifts come disguised as the worst betrayals. But most of all, I would tell her about the day I learned that the heart has infinite capacity for love, and that the most beautiful thing you can do with a secret is not to keep it buried, but to transform it into truth. Because in the end, truth, messy and complicated and human as it is always better than the prettiest lie. The nurse came in to check on us, smiling at the picture we made, Marcus and me and Hope, our little family complete at last. "She's beautiful," the nurse said. "What's her name?" "Hope," I said, and the word felt like a prayer, like a promise, like the beginning of every story worth telling. Her name is Hope. 2 years had passed since Hope Elena came into the world, and life had settled into a rhythm I hadn't expected. The chaos that had erupted from that DNA test had transformed into something resembling normalcy, though it was a different kind of normal than any of us had known before. Hope was walking now, her chubby legs carrying her around our living room with the determined confidence of a toddler who believed the world existed solely for her exploration. She had Marcus's eyes, but my stubborn streak, a combination that both delighted and exhausted us daily. "Mama," she said, tugging on my jeans as I tried to finish preparing for the family barbecue. "Up." I lifted her onto my hip, inhaling the sweet scent of her baby shampoo. "We're going to see Cousin Elena today," I told her. "Are you excited?" Hope clapped her hands, though I suspected her excitement had more to do with the promise of outdoor play than with seeing her cousin. At 2, her understanding of family relationships was limited to people who give me attention and sometimes cookies. The barbecue was Derek and Vanessa's idea, a way to celebrate Elena's first birthday and continue the tradition of family gatherings that had somehow become more meaningful after nearly being destroyed. It was being held at Linda and Robert's house, in the backyard where Derek had learned to ride a bike and where James now sometimes came to photograph the changing seasons. "You ready for this?" Marcus asked, loading the diaper bag into our car. We'd learned that any outing with Hope required enough supplies to survive a small apocalypse. "As ready as anyone can be for a family gathering where half the people involved didn't know they were related 2 years ago," I said, strapping Hope into her car seat. The dynamics had stabilized, mostly. Robert and Derek had worked through their initial hurt and confusion with the help of family therapy and a shared love of baseball statistics. James had found his place as the artistic mentor figure, teaching Derek photography and bringing a different perspective to family discussions. Linda had emerged from the ordeal stronger, no longer carrying the weight of her 30-year secret. And Vanessa? Vanessa had surprised everyone by becoming genuinely introspective about the whole experience. Motherhood had changed her in ways I hadn't expected, making her more thoughtful and less performative. She still posted on social media, but now her captions talked about the messy reality of parenting rather than just the picture-perfect moments. When we arrived at Linda and Robert's house, the backyard was already bustling with activity. A banner reading, "Happy First Birthday, Elena," hung between 2 oak trees, and folding tables groaned under the weight of potluck dishes. The sight should have been familiar and comfortable, but I still felt a small knot of tension in my stomach at these gatherings. Not because I expected drama anymore, but because they served as reminders of how much could change in such a short time. "Mia!" Sarah called out, jogging over with her own toddler, my nephew Jake, balanced on her hip. "How's my favorite niece doing?" she cooed at Hope, who immediately reached for her aunt with grabby hands. "She's been asking about Jake all morning," I said, though this was a generous interpretation of Hope's babbled JJ sounds. "And how are you doing? Really?" Sarah's voice dropped to a more serious tone. My sister had been my anchor through all the family upheaval, and she still checked in regularly to make sure I wasn't harboring any residual guilt or resentment. "I'm good, actually good, not just saying it, and I meant it." The guilt had taken time to process, but therapy and honest conversations with everyone involved had helped me understand that while my actions had consequences, they'd also led to a more authentic version of our family, though I still have moments where I can't believe how everything spiraled from a baby name. "Sometimes the smallest stones create the biggest ripples," Sarah said philosophically, then immediately ruined the profound moment by adding, "Speaking of which, Jake threw up in my car on the way here, so I'm going to need to borrow some paper towels." As Sarah headed inside to deal with her parenting crisis, I looked around the backyard and took inventory of the various family clusters. Derek was at the grill with Robert, the two of them engaged in what appeared to be a serious discussion about optimal cooking times for different cuts of meat. James sat at a picnic table with Linda, showing her something on his camera's display screen. The easy familiarity between them wasn't romantic, that ship had sailed decades ago, but there was a comfortable friendship that spoke to what they might have had in different circumstances. Vanessa was near the sandbox that Robert had built for the grandchildren, watching baby Elena with the hyper-vigilant attention of a first-time mother. Elena was a beautiful baby, with Derek's gentle eyes and Vanessa's delicate features. She also had an impressive set of lungs, which she was currently demonstrating by expressing her displeasure at being confined to the sandbox. "She's got opinions," I said, settling onto the bench beside Vanessa as Hope wriggled down from my lap to investigate the sandbox toys. "She definitely knows what she wants," Vanessa agreed, scooping Elena up and bouncing her gently, just like her mommy used to, according to Derek's parents. There was something different in Vanessa's tone when she talked about Derek's parents now, less possessive, more inclusive. The revelation about Derek's paternity had initially made her defensive and territorial, but time had shown her that love wasn't diminished by being shared among more people. "How are things going with the expanded family situation?" I asked, genuinely curious. This was still delicate territory, but Vanessa and I had developed a careful honesty with each other over the past 2 years. "Better than I expected, actually. He's really good with Derek, and with Alina. He brings this calm energy that balances out Derek's intensity." She paused, watching as James helped Hope stack blocks in the sandbox. "I was so afraid at first that he would try to replace Robert, or that Derek would choose him over his dad, over Robert. But it's not like that at all. It's more like Derek gained another person who loves him unconditionally." "And how's Robert handling it all?" "He's good. He and Linda seem stronger than they've been in years, actually. Like working through this crisis reminded them why they chose each other in the first place." Vanessa shifted Alina to her other hip. "It's weird, you know. Your revenge plot actually made our family stronger." I winced at the word revenge, though it was accurate. "I still feel terrible about how it all went down." "I know you do. And I still feel terrible about taking Aurora from you. But look around, Mia." She gestured to the backyard full of family members in various configurations, biological, chosen, and somewhere in between. "Maybe we both needed to go through this to get to where we are now." Hope had discovered a particularly interesting stick and was now attempting to feed it to Alina, who was eyeing it with the serious consideration of a food critic. I rescued both children from this potential disaster, earning grateful looks from both mothers. "Speaking of where we are now," Vanessa said, "I have something to tell you. We're trying for another baby." I felt a familiar pang, not of jealousy exactly, but of that old competitiveness that used to define our relationship. "That's wonderful," I said, and was surprised to find that I meant it. "We want Alina to have a sibling close in age. And honestly, after everything that happened with the family revelations, Derek and I both want to create more continuity, more connections." "Any thoughts on names?" I asked, then immediately worried that the question might be loaded with our history. Vanessa laughed. "We've learned our lesson about borrowing names that belong to other people's stories. We're thinking about family names, but ones that actually belong to our family. Maybe Robert, if it's a boy, or James as a middle name." "That's perfect," I said, and meant it. "Those names have earned their place in your family story." Marcus appeared beside us, having successfully completed the complex negotiations required to extract Hope from the sandbox. "Ladies, I hate to interrupt, but someone needs a diaper change and has very strong opinions about where that should happen." As I headed inside with Hope, I passed Derek and Robert at the grill. Their conversation had evolved from cooking times to baseball statistics, a sure sign that all was well in their world. Derek looked up as I passed. "Hey, Mia, can I talk to you for a minute? After the diaper situation is resolved, I mean." 20 minutes later, after Hope had been changed, fed a strategic snack, and returned to the sandbox, Derek and I found ourselves walking the perimeter of his parents' backyard. It was a conversation pit stop we'd developed over the past 2 years, a way to have serious discussions while still keeping an eye on the family gathering. "So, what's on your mind?" I asked. "James wants to do a photography exhibition," Derek said, "a series about families and identity, and the stories we tell ourselves about who we are." "That sounds amazing." "He wants to include our family, all of us, Robert, Linda, me, Vanessa, the kids, even you and Marcus and Hope, if you're willing." I was quiet for a moment, processing this. What would that look like? Portraits, but also documentary-style photos from gatherings like this. He wants to show how families can be created and recreated, how love adapts to new circumstances. Derek stopped walking and turned to face me. "The thing is, he wants to be honest about the story, about how the truth came out, about your role in it." My stomach dropped. "Derek, I don't know if I'm comfortable being portrayed as the person who gave me the gift of knowing my biological father," Derek interrupted. "Who helped bring our family together in a way that never would have happened otherwise? I destroyed your parents' marriage. I turned your world upside down." You revealed a truth that was already there, and my parents' marriage survived because it was strong enough to handle the truth. Derek's voice was gentle but firm. Mia, I know your motivations weren't pure. I know you were hurt and angry and looking for a way to strike back at Vanessa. But the result was that I got to meet James. My parents got to work through something that had been hanging over their marriage for 30 years, and our whole family learned how to be more honest with each other. We had reached the back corner of the yard where Robert's vegetable garden was flourishing in the late summer sun. The tomatoes were heavy on their vines, and I could smell the basil from several feet away. What does everyone else think about the exhibition? I asked. Everyone's on board. Linda thinks it's important to show that families come in all configurations, that love isn't limited by biology or conventional structures. Robert sees it as a way to honor all the different kinds of fatherhood. Vanessa thinks it could help other families going through similar situations. And you, what do you think? Derek was quiet for a moment, picking a cherry tomato and popping it into his mouth. I think our story is messy and complicated and human, and I think there's value in showing that. I think there are probably other families out there carrying secrets that are eating them alive, and maybe seeing our story will help them find the courage to seek their own truth. Even if that truth is painful, especially if it's painful. The pain of truth is different from the pain of secrets. It's sharper, but it's also cleaner. It doesn't fester the way secrets do. From across the yard, we could hear the birthday party moving into full swing. Someone had started singing Happy Birthday, and Elena was either laughing or crying. It was hard to tell from this distance. So what do you say? Derek asked. Will you be part of the exhibition? I thought about it, about having our story told publicly, about being portrayed as both the catalyst and the complicicator of this family's evolution. It was terrifying and vulnerable and completely outside my comfort zone. Yes, I heard myself say, but I want input on how the story is told. I don't want to be painted as either a villain or a hero. I want to be shown as what I was, a flawed person who made a questionable decision that happened to lead to positive outcomes. Derek grinned. James will love that. He's all about complexity and nuance in his work. We walked back toward the party, where Elena's first birthday celebration was reaching its crescendo. Someone had produced a guitar, and Marcus was leading an impromptu sing-along of children's songs. Hope was clapping along enthusiastically, though she was at least 2 beats behind everyone else. There's something else, Derek said as we rejoined the group. James wants to donate a portion of the exhibition proceeds to DNA reunification services, organizations that help people navigate family discoveries like ours. That's a beautiful idea. We thought you might want to be involved in choosing which organizations to support, since you have, shall we say, first-hand experience with the DNA discovery process. I laughed despite myself. I suppose I do have a unique perspective on the subject. The afternoon continued with the comfortable chaos of a multi-generational family gathering. Elena smeared birthday cake across her high chair tray with the dedication of a tiny artist. Hope alternated between playing with the other children and demanding to be held by various relatives. The adults cycled through conversations about work, parenting, politics, and the eternal question of whether it was too early to start Christmas shopping. As the sun began to set, James gathered everyone for an impromptu photo session. Not for the exhibition, he assured us, just family pictures for the grandparents' refrigerators. But I could see him studying the light, considering angles, finding the moments of genuine connection between his subjects. This is nice, Linda said, settling beside me on the porch steps as James directed the group photos. I never thought I'd say this, but I'm glad everything came out the way it did, even with all the pain it caused. Especially because of the pain it caused. We're stronger for having worked through it together. She paused, watching as Robert and James collaborating on getting the perfect shot of all the grandchildren. And I'm finally free of that secret. Do you know what it's like to carry something like that for 30 years? I can't imagine. It changes you, makes you cautious, guarded, always afraid that someone will figure it out. I'm a different person now that it's in the open. A better person, I think. Robert seems okay with everything now. He is. We both are. Counseling helped, but mostly it was just time and honest communication. And Robert loves Derek so much, biology was never going to change that. If anything, knowing the truth helped him understand some things about Derek's personality that never quite made sense before. James called for one more group shot, this time with everyone together. 3 generations, biological and chosen family members, all clustered together on Linda and Robert's back porch. As I stood there with Hope on my hip and Marcus's arm around my shoulders, surrounded by this complicated, beautiful family that had been forged through secrets and revelations and forgiveness, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. Not gratitude for the pain we'd all endured, but gratitude for what had grown from it, for the relationships that had been strengthened, the truths that had been revealed, the love that had expanded to encompass new configurations of family. "Perfect," James said, lowering his camera. "That's the one." As we began the process of gathering children and diaper bags and leftover cake, Vanessa approached me one more time. "I have something for you," she said, pulling a small wrapped box from her purse. "It's not much, but I saw it and thought of you." Inside the box was a delicate silver necklace with a small pendant shaped like the northern lights, the aurora borealis. It was simple and beautiful, and it made my throat tight with emotion. "Vanessa, I know I can't give you back the name," she said quietly, "and I know Aurora will always be special to you because of your mom, but I wanted you to have something that honors that connection, something that's just yours." I put the necklace on immediately, feeling the weight of the pendant against my chest. "Thank you. This means more than you know." "We both made mistakes," Vanessa said, "but we both learned from them too. And now our daughters are going to grow up as cousins, as friends. Maybe that's the real gift that came out of all this chaos." Driving home in the gathering darkness, with Hope asleep in her car seat and the aurora pendant catching the streetlights, I reflected on how much had changed since that baby shower 2.5 years ago. The woman who had sat in that cemetery, plotting revenge over a stolen name, felt like a stranger to me now. "Penny for your thoughts," Marcus said, reaching over to squeeze my hand. "Just thinking about the exhibition, about how strange it's going to be to have our story told publicly." "Having second thoughts?" "No, I don't think so. It's just, this all started because I was hurt and angry and wanted to get back at Vanessa. Now it's going to be presented as this beautiful story about family and truth and growth." It is a beautiful story about family and truth and growth. It's also a story about revenge and secrets and the unintended consequences of our actions. Stories can be both things at once. James said something similar about complexity and nuance. Smart man. And he's right. The most interesting stories are the ones that don't have clear heroes and villains, the ones where people make questionable decisions that lead to unexpected outcomes. Hope stirred in her car seat, making the soft murmuring sounds that meant she was dreaming. I turned to look at her, my miracle baby, my hope made manifest, and thought about all the stories I would tell her someday. About her grandmother, Elena, about the complicated path that led to her birth, about the importance of truth and forgiveness, and the courage to admit when you've made mistakes. "Do you think we'll have more kids?" I asked Marcus suddenly. "Is that something you want?" "I think so. Not right away, but someday. I keep thinking about what Vanessa said about wanting Elena to have siblings, about creating more connections. Hope would be a good big sister." "She would, and I'd like her to have someone to share all these family stories with, someone who understands the complicated history that brought us all together." "Then we'll talk about it, when the time feels right." We pulled into our driveway, and Marcus carried Hope inside while I gathered the remnants of our day. The diaper bag, the leftover cake, the small gifts that Linda had sent home with all the grandchildren. Normal family gathering detritus, evidence of a day well spent with people we loved. As I was getting Hope ready for bed, she pointed to the aurora pendant around my neck. "Pretty," she said, one of her newer words. "It is pretty," I agreed, "and it has a special meaning. Someday, when you're older, I'll tell you all about it." "Story?" Hope asked hopefully. She was in a phase where she demanded stories at bedtime, though her attention span was still limited to very short tales about animals and colors. "Not tonight, baby, But someday, I'll tell you the most important story of all, the story of how our family came to be exactly the way it is. Hope accepted this with the philosophical resignation of a 2-year-old who knew that someday was a concept beyond her current understanding. She curled up with her favorite stuffed elephant and was asleep within minutes. I stood in her doorway for a moment, watching her sleep and thinking about the future. In a few months, James's exhibition would open, and our story would be shared with strangers. There would probably be questions, maybe criticism, certainly discussions about family privacy and the ethics of DNA testing and the complications of modern family structures. But I wasn't afraid of those conversations anymore. Our story was messy and imperfect and human, and those were exactly the kinds of stories that needed to be told. Because somewhere out there, there was probably another family carrying secrets, another person making questionable decisions out of hurt and anger, another child who deserved to know the truth about where they came from. And maybe, just maybe, our complicated story would help them find their version of truth and healing and the kind of love that grows stronger when it's stretched to encompass more than we originally thought possible.